Windows event logs is something that you encounter almost daily as a SOC analyst, and the more you know about them, the better you'll become. The goal with these event logs are not to memorize each and every event ID or code, but rather understand where interesting information might exist. For example, if a user were to log in, where would you find that information? Or what about if a service was installed? In this video, we'll go over another Sherlock challenge from Hack the Box called Logjammer, and you'll get to learn how to analyze Windows event logs. Let's get started. To begin, you want to head over to hackthebox.com and sign in with your account. If you don't have an account, go ahead and create one. Once you create your account, head over to Sherlock's, which is on the left-hand side, and the challenge that we're looking for is called Logjammer. So let's take a look at the scenario here. It says, you have been presented with the opportunity to work as a junior deferred consultant for a big consultancy. However, they have provided a technical assessment for you to complete. The consultancy, Security, would like to gauge your Windows event log analysis knowledge. We believe the cyber junkie user logged into his computer and may have taken malicious actions. Please analyze the given event logs and report back. Alright, let's go ahead and download our file by clicking on the download button. And I'll save this under my downloads directory. And do take note of the password, and you can find that by clicking on the key icon here. And the password is hacktheblue. And I'll head over to my downloads folder. So I have my logjammer.zip here, and I do have 7-zip installed. I'll go ahead and extract that and put in our password. And we have our logjammer directory. If I head over to the directory, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Windows event logs. Now, there are many different ways to analyze event logs. However, in this video, I will be using Splunk to analyze our event logs. That way, I can use Splunk's query language to query the data that I need. To do this, I am going to assume that you have Splunk installed. If you don't, I have a video where I'll link down below that will walk you through on how you can install and get Splunk set up. To get our Windows event logs into our Splunk environment, the first thing you want to do after logging into Splunk is head over to Settings, which is on the top right corner, and click on Add Data. From the bottom, you'll have 3 different options: Upload, Monitor, and Forward. I'll select Monitor. And then on the left-hand side, we have various different options. The one that we're interested in is called Files and Directories. And then I'll click on Browse, and we'll head over to the directory of where our files are stored. So C, users, Steven, downloads, and it's under Logjammer. So go ahead and expand that. Event logs, I'll go ahead and expand that. And we have our event logs here. So I'll click on the directory called event logs, and everything should be highlighted. Click on select, and I'll leave the include list and exclude list as blank. Click on next, leave the source type as automatic, app context as search and reporting. The host value, I'll leave it as constant value. For the index, it is currently set to default, but what I'll do is I'll create a new index, and then I'll call this HTB-logjammer. Click on save, and let's click on review and submit. Select start searching, and currently we have 0 events. So what I'll do here is I'll just remove everything except for our index. Click on the search button, and we have a total of 1,753 events. What I'll do is I'll wait a couple minutes just to make sure our data is being fully ingested into our SIM. All right, after a couple minutes, I refresh this and we have 4,252 events. Let's head over to our Hack the Box and take a look at question number 1. When did cyber junkie user first successfully log into his computer on UTC time? So that brings me to another note. Do make sure that when you have Splunk installed, you set the time zone to UTC time. And how do you do that? Well, you want to click on your username, which in my case is administrator, click on preferences, and currently my time zone is set to GMT, and this is UTC time. For you, you might have it as default system time zone, and you don't want that, unless your computer is already set up using UTC time. So instead, you want to make sure you manually select GMT time and then hit apply. Once that's good, you can go ahead and refresh it and you should be good to go. If not, you might want to sign out of your account and sign back in. So again, if we take a look at the question number 1, it says, when did the user cyber junkie first successfully log into his computer? And again, we are dealing with Windows event logs. So if you're completely new to analyzing Windows event logs, we can just Google. Over on Google, I can type in Windows event logs, successful login. And we have the event ID of 4624. It says, this documents every successful attempt at logging on to a local computer. So I'll head over to my Splunk environment and let's go ahead and see if there's any fields on the left-hand side that will allow us to filter for our event ID of 4624. Taking a look at the event fields, we do have an event code and there's nothing that says event ID. So if I scroll down, we do have 271 more fields. So I'll click on that. Right now, our coverage is set to 1% or more. I'll select that and select all fields. And then I will filter for events, and we do not see an event ID field. Now, the reason why I'm looking for event ID is because if we take a look at Google, it says event ID of 4624. But if we take a look at Splunk, there is no event ID, except there is an event code. So maybe that is the one that we want. To confirm this, I'll go ahead and hit X. And if we take a look at our Google, and let's select the resource that I love to use, which is called ultimatewindowssecurity.com. I highly recommend that you take this and bookmark this site, especially if you're new to Windows event logs. Now, notice how it says Windows Security Log Event ID 4624. This means that this particular event ID of 4624 exists under the security event log. This is incredibly important to know because event IDs are not unique. Going back over to our Splunk environment, if we take a look at the source, we can see that there is an event log of system, event log of firewall, event log of PowerShell operational, Windows Defender, and security. This is the one that we're interested in. So I'll go ahead and select that, and our query should automatically be updated. Now I can click on the arrow icon right here, which is beside the time, and I can see what kind of fields Splunk had parsed for our event ID. Scrolling down, we do see our event code, which is what we referenced before, and we see that this is 4702. What this is telling me is that if I wanted to look for the event ID of 4624, we must use the field name of event code. So that is what I'll use. I'll include event code equals 4624. Do note that the field names are case sensitive. So for example, if I were to type in event code with a lowercase e, I would likely get 0 events. And yeah, 0 events here. But if I were to put in a capital E and hit search, I have 67 events. So do keep that in mind. Field names are case sensitive. Field values are not case sensitive. And just to drill this down, take a look at my downloads here. There is a capital D. If I were to just put a lowercase d and hit enter, I still have events. But if I were to do a capital S for source, I would get nothing because field names are case sensitive. Hopefully that makes perfect sense. So we have 67 events, and the question is looking for when did CyberJunkie successfully log in? Let's go ahead and copy the username of CyberJunkie, and I'll paste that in here. Click on search, and we do have 4 events. Now with Splunk, we do see the latest event at the top, which is the first event. So if we wanted to see when was the first time somebody logged in, we would want to look at the earliest event, and that is at the very bottom. And this occurred on March 27th, 2023 at 2:37:09 p.m. UTC time. Go ahead and expand the event and let's take a look. We have our event ID of 4624 and the computer is desktop-887GK2L. Taking a look at the logon type. So the logon type is 2 and we do have our CyberJunkie user. Awesome. So let's go ahead and copy the time here. Head over to our Hack the Box and take note of the format. They want day, month, year, hour, minutes, and seconds. So they want a day. This one is month. So I'll change that to 27. Day, month. So 03 and year 2023. And they wanted hours, minutes, and seconds. They do not want the milliseconds. Go ahead and hit submit. And sorry, wrong answer. Maybe they want the 24-hour clock here. So 2 p.m. is 14. Click on submit And that is correct. Awesome. Question number 2. The user tampered with firewall settings on the system. Analyze the firewall event logs to find out the name of the firewall rule added. Okay, so we can do what we just did earlier, and that is to Google. I'll search up firewall added event code. And we have event code of 4946, where a change has been made to Windows Firewall. Well, let's try that out. I'll head over to Splunk, scroll up, and let's change our query. I'll type in event code equals 4946. And we have 0 events. All right, so what I'll do instead is type in firewall, and let's take a look at what event codes exist on the left-hand side. So we do have 7 total unique event codes that we can use. It is important to note that if we take a look at the source, because we're interested in the modification of the firewall, we want to make sure that we're looking at the correct log source. Currently, we have Windows Firewall and System. Now, although it is only one event under System, in theory, we could get away with this, but in the real world, you might have multiple events. What I would typically do to narrow my search is to look at specifically the event log provider that would provide me with the information I need, and then go broad. In this case, I am interested in only the firewall data. So I'll select that, and we have a total of 929 events. Now, again, we can take a look at the event code. We went down from 7 to 6. And we have 2004, 6, 5, 2010, 2033, and 2051. The next thing we can do is search up each event ID to see what that event entails. But if we're interested in firewall additions, what I can do instead is add in the keyword of added and then hit enter. And now we're down to 490 events. If we take a look at our event code, we have 1, and that is event code 2004. So if we expand the first event from the top, which again is the latest event, we can see that the message for event ID of 2004 is a rule has been added to the Windows Defender Firewall exception list. And rule name Metasploit C2 bypass. Okay. If we take a look at the user field, it currently says not translated. So how do we know which user was responsible for adding a particular rule to a firewall? Well, the beauty of users is that they're tied to what is called a security identifier, aka a SID. And a security identifier is used to uniquely identify a security principal or security group. Security principals can represent any entity that can be authenticated by the operating system, such as a user account or a computer account, a thread or process that runs in the security context of a user or computer account. If you want to learn more about security identifiers, I will leave a link down below. Now, if we take a look at CyberJunkie, so let me open up a new tab here, and then I'll type in my index htb-logjammer. Let's go over to event code equals 4624, and I'll look for CyberJunkie. Currently it's set to 24 hours. What I'll do is select all time, and we have the 4 events, and I'll just expand the first event from the top. Now we see that the user is CyberJunkie, and associated with this user is a security ID. So again, this is the identifier. And if we take a look at it, it begins with S-1-5-21 and ends in 1001. If we take a look at the Microsoft Learn documentation, we can see the breakdown of a security identifier, and there is some uniqueness to it. This is a great way to identify users. Heading back over to my Splunk environment, I'll go ahead and copy CyberJunkie's security identifier. And if we go over to the firewall one, I can see that there's a field called modifying users. And if we take a look on the left, we have modifying_user. So I'll go ahead and include CyberJunkie's user account there. Modifying_user equals, paste in the SID and hit search. Now I have 29 events. Because I am searching for the modifying user of CyberJunkie's security identifier, I can safely assume that CyberJunkie is the one responsible for making these changes to the firewall rules. And now that we have this query good to go, you might ask, which one is interesting to us? Well, if you recall, CyberJunkie successfully logged into this computer on the 27th of March, making this a starting point for now. And if we take a look at our event, we only have one firewall rule on the 27th. This is likely our candidate. I'll go ahead and expand the event. This is the Metasploit C2 bypass. For those that don't know what Metasploit is, it is essentially a penetration testing tool. I'll copy this and head over to Hack the Box, paste that in there, hit submit, and that's correct. What's the direction of the firewall rule? Let's see here. Direction is outbound. I'll paste that in, and that's correct too. The user changed audit policy of the computer. What's the subcategory of this changed policy? So the user changed the audit policy. What I'll do is just Google this, type in event ID, changed audit policy. And we get an event ID of 4719, where it says system audit policy was changed. Head back over to my Splunk. Let's go ahead and remove all of this juicy information. And then let's modify our query saying event code equals 4719. And we have one event. This occurred on March 27th at 2:50:03 p.m. UTC. Go ahead and expand that. And let's take a look here. We have category of object access, subcategory of other object access events. What does that do? Well, we can right click this and just search Google. Click on the first link. And let's see here. Audit other object access events allows you to monitor operations with scheduled task, COM plus objects, and indirect object access requests. If I take a look at the bottom here, it enables the following event IDs. So 4671, an application attempted to access a blocked ordinal through the TBS. And if we look at 4698, we can see a scheduled task was created. That's pretty cool. So by enabling this audit other object access events, it enabled the computer to start tracking these kind of events. And tracking a scheduled task creation will allow you to start detecting any persistence via scheduled task. Over to Splunk, I will go ahead and copy the subcategory, and let's paste that into our Hack the Box. I did misspell that, so let's remove the V, and perfect. The user CyberJunkie created a scheduled task. What's the name of this task? So without enabling the other object access events, we wouldn't have captured this creation of a scheduled task. I'll go ahead and copy CyberJunkie, head over to my Splunk, and let's paste in CyberJunkie. And taking a look at the event ID of 4698, which is a scheduled task was created, that is the one that we want. So 4698. And we have one event. Awesome. This occurred on 2/51/21. And let's take a look. And the task name is HTB-automation. Scrolling down. And let's take a look at the command here. It runs a PowerShell script called automation-HTB with the arguments of -a cyberjunkie at hackthebox.eu. I'll copy the task name and let's head over to Hack the Box and paste that in. That's good. What's the full path of the file which was scheduled for the task? And that we know is a PowerShell script. So let's go ahead and copy that and paste it in here. What are the arguments of the command? That was the -a cyberjunkie. Hit submit. The antivirus running on the system identified a threat and performed actions on it. Which tool was identified as malware by antivirus? Well, before we begin Googling what event ID exists, head over to our Splunk and remove everything except for our index, and then click on the source and see what log source might have antivirus related activity. Well, if I take a look, event log system, would that have it? Maybe. Windows Firewall? Probably not. PowerShell operational? Windows Defender? This seems to be a pretty good candidate as it is natively installed on every Windows machine, acting as your antivirus. So if something were to be detected, it may very likely be included within this Windows Defender operational event log. And then we have security. That could be one as well. But because we do have Windows Defender, let's go ahead and drill into this one. And now we have a total of 444 events. similar to what we've done before, is take a look at the event codes. Now we do have 14 unique values. So I'll click on that and look at that. We have the top 10 values. So now we can start Googling what these mean. So I'll type in event ID Windows Defender. Click on the first link, which is Microsoft Defender Antivirus Event IDs. And let's take a look at the first one. Event ID 1000. This one is an anti-malware scan started. We're not interested in that. Taking a look at the next one, 1001. An anti-malware scan finished. We're not interested in that either. What we're interested in is identified a threat and performed actions on it. So let's try and see if there's anyone that identifies a threat. So what I'll do is hit Control F to find and type in identify. And there's nothing for identify. What about identified? No, nothing. Okay, what about detect? Detect has 62 results. What about detected? Oh, better. This one has 16. So we have event ID 1006. The anti-malware engine found malware or potentially unwanted software. This seems to be a pretty good candidate. So let's go ahead and search up event ID, or well, in this case, event code equals 1006, and there's 0 events. Okay, that's fine. Let's go next. This one is event ID 1015. The anti-malware platform detected suspicious behavior. Again, a pretty good candidate, and 0 events. Let's try the next one. So the next one is 1116. The anti-malware platform detected malware or other potentially unwanted software. This one is 1116, and we have 139 events. If we recall, our timeline of interest is March 27th. So if we take a look at the events that occurred on March 27th, there are only 2 events here. So let's expand the earliest event that occurred on the 27th. And look at that. We have hack tool, PowerShell, SharpHound. Let's Google what SharpHound is. So we see that SharpHound is part of Bloodhound. And if I click on what is SharpHound used for? SharpHound is a data collection tool and Bloodhound is an analysis and visualization tool. Together, they help identify and visualize Active Directory trust relationships and privilege escalation paths within a network. Bad news? Maybe. Potentially. So if we take a look at Hack the Box, it says the antivirus running on the system identified a threat. Which tool was identified as malware by antivirus? Likely the SharpHound, but we did have 2 events. So let's scroll up and expand the latest event. And this one is SharpHound as well. So this is going to be SharpHound. Awesome. What's the full path of the malware which raised the alert? The full path. Well, if we take a look at the path here, we see container file, and it's located under the C users cyberjunkie downloads sharphound.zip. So I'll go ahead and copy that, and let's paste that in here. Nice. What action was taken by the antivirus? Let's see here. Is there an action? And there doesn't appear to be so. And that would make sense because event code 1116 is just saying, hey, we detected malware or other potentially unwanted software. But it doesn't mention anything about taking action. So if we go back over to our Microsoft Defender antivirus event IDs, if we scroll down just a little bit here, we have event ID 1117. And if we look at the message, it says the anti-malware platform performed an action to protect your system from malware. So this seems to be a pretty good candidate to identify what exactly was done to that particular malware. Over to my Splunk, let's change 1116 to 1117. And again, we do have 2 events on the 27th, expanding the earliest one. This right here is our SharpHound. And let's see if there's an action anywhere. Right here. Action is quarantine. Copy that, head over to Hack the Box and paste that in. Now, as a side note here, if we go over to Splunk, do notice how there are other events, right? So we do have some that are on March 10th, and we have a bunch of other ones as well. We have 4 tabs worth of data. Now, in a real world environment, this is terrible news because now we have just expanded our compromised timeline, meaning this machine was likely compromised before the 27th. However, in this scenario, I don't think, or at least I hope not, cyberjunkie is this cruel. So let's keep focusing on the current timeline, which is March 27th. I will, however, do keep note of the earliest detection date and time, just in case. For our next question, we have the user used PowerShell to execute commands. What command was executed by the user? Similar to what we did for our Windows Defender, I'll scroll up, remove everything except for our index, and then I'll click on source to look at what log providers exist. We have system, Windows Firewall, and we have PowerShell. So if the question is looking for PowerShell, it is likely that our event of interest is located under this PowerShell operational log provider. So I'll click on that to automatically filter for it. And we have a total of 578 events. I'll go ahead and Google PowerShell execute commands event ID. And we have the event ID of 4104, which is script block execution. And this logs the execution of PowerShell script blocks, contains the contents of the invoked commands, provides detailed information on script execution for analysis. This sounds about right. So I'll type in event code equals 4104, and we have 381 events. Now again, we know our timeline of interest is March 27th. So let's make sure that we are looking in that timeline. Now we could change the time from all time to drill into March 27th of 2023, but I'll just leave it as is. Scrolling down, we do see our earliest event on the 27th on 2:58:07 UTC time. So if I go ahead and expand this, taking a look at the message, it says creating script block text, 1 of 1, and it says prompt. That doesn't really tell me much. If I expand the next one, we do see a command here, get-file-hash-algorithm MD5, and it points over to the automation-htb.ps1, which is a PowerShell script that we saw earlier. Now what this command does is that it will generate an MD5 file hash for this particular PowerShell script. Let's go ahead and expand the last event, and we do see our prompt again. So it is likely that this right here, the get-file hash, is the command that they're looking for. Go over to hack the box, and I'll enter in the command here. And that is correct. The last question here, we suspect the user deleted some event logs. Which event log was cleared? This is a pretty common technique that a lot of attackers use to try and hide their tracks. Now we can go ahead and Google, just like what we did for everything else. I'll type in event log cleared event ID. And we have whenever Windows security audit log is cleared, an event ID of 1102 is logged. So let's go ahead and change our query to event code equals 1102. And we do have one event. This occurred on March 27th at 2:36:45 UTC time. And it says the audit log was cleared. So whenever we do see an event code of 1102, that means the security event log was cleared. However, there is another event log that will be generated if anything other than the security audit log was cleared. And that is event ID 104 under the system log provider. So if I were to type in event code equals 104, we have 15 events. And remember, our timeline of interest is on the 27th of March. So if I expand this, we can see that there is a log clear for the log provider of Microsoft Windows Firewall with advanced security/firewall. And this was cleared at 3:01:56. So now we have two log providers that we can use for that answer. However, if we go back over, it says we suspect the user deleted some event logs. Which event log was cleared? For this particular demo, I am going to assume that the timeline of interest is when the CyberJunkie user account first logged in. And if you recall, CyberJunkie first logged in around 14:37:09, which is 2:37:09. And the security audit log was cleared at 14:36:45, which was less than a minute before CyberJunkie logged in. So if I were to start the timeline of when CyberJunkie logged in, we can see that the Microsoft Windows Firewall with advanced security/firewall log was cleared at 3:01:56, which would mean that this is likely our answer to the last question. Because again, this occurred after CyberJunkie logged in. So I'll copy the log provider and head over to Hack the Box and paste that in. Awesome. We have just completed Logjammer. Hopefully you learned something new by following along, and I would highly encourage you to try this lab again, but this time try doing it on your own and see how far you can go. If you're interested in learning more and want to become a SOC analyst, I do have a course called the MyDFIR SOC Analyst course, and it is tailored to tackle one problem, and that is the lack of practical experience. This course is tailored to provide you with everything you need to know to become an amazing SOC analyst. It has over 30 labs and 5 exclusive SOC projects, along with a final capstone that mimics a real compromise. You can find more information about the course down below. That is it for the video, and I hope that you found that informative. If you did, let me know by hitting that like button and subscribe if you want to. Remember to stay curious and do things differently.